and welcome to Theme Park History, the channel for everything to do with theme parks, old and new, big and small. In today's episode, we will be taking a look at Universal Studios Florida's Earthquake, the big one, a special effects attraction that opened at the park on June 7, 1990 and closed on September 8, 2015. This attraction was suggested by Attraction Ideas, Chogan 10, and Alexander the Great 515, so thank you for your comments. As always, if there's an attraction you would like us to cover on the channel, leave a comment down below. You never know, your suggestion might be next month's video. Inspired by the 1974 disaster film Earthquake, and the attraction on the Universal Studios Hollywood Studio Tour, Earthquake the Big One was one of the three major Universal Studios Florida original attractions to open with the park, along with Confrontation and Jaws. While the giant ape and the great white shark put guests directly into the action from their movies, both were short experiences spanning just a few minutes, with little to no information provided on how the movies were actually made. Earthquake the Big One would change this, as the attraction would focus on educating guests while at the same time entertaining them. In doing so, Earthquake would go on to define a new type of attraction that was never seen before, as well as becoming the model for other attractions at both Universal and Disney theme parks in the future. Like many of the original attractions to open at Universal Studios Florida, Earthquake the Big One originated as an attraction on the studio tour at Universal Studios Hollywood. Opening in 1988 and taking place in Soundstage 50, the special effects show places guests in the middle of a large earthquake, an 8.3 on the Richter scale. The tram stop was a hit with guests, leading Universal to bring it to their brand new theme park in Florida, but bigger and better as its own standalone attraction. As like with many of the original attractions at the park, Peter Alexander and the Totally Fun Company were responsible for designing the ride. The show producer for Earthquake was Richard Crane, who was responsible for the design and creation of scenes featuring collapsing buildings, rippling pavements, and raging gas fires that repeated every few minutes. In order to achieve the spectacular effects in the subway sequence, hydraulic technology was utilized, which used pressurized liquid pumping through pipes to produce the motions of the on-set props. In the attraction, the computerized hydraulics would enable all of the scenery elements that were destroyed by the earthquake to return precisely to their original positions in time for the next train full of guests to arrive. Crane was keen to stress how Earthquake would differ from other theme park attractions not only at Universal, but all over the world. Dubbed edutainment, Earthquake would incorporate several pre-show presentations on how the special effects were created for the movie before guests experienced the actual attraction. Earthquake the Big One would open with the park on June 7, 1990. Just like Confrontation and Jaws, the attraction ran into numerous problems on opening day, and would have to be shut down occasionally for repairs and tweaks. However, after the first few months of operation, the attraction would be up and running with little to no problems.
Nothing can match the spectacle of nature in full fury, and no other medium of the arts can capture it the way a movie can. With the aid of special effects, a volcano buries a city in ashes, fire consumes a high-rise building, or a hurricane submerges an island. Earthquake was awarded an Oscar for special effects, and here you will experience the power of the most shattering natural disaster on Earth as the 8.3 earthquake strikes Orlando. Of course, it could only happen here within a great soundstage. But then, Universal Studios Florida is adventure. We have boarded our subway train in Oakland. It carries us into a tunnel and under the bay to the Embarcadero in San Francisco.
Arriving at the Embarcadero. Depart here for Ghirardelli Square, Fisherman's Wharf, Ferry Building, and the Financial District. Embarcadero, next stop.
A tremor shakes the train. We freeze in terror. And then it begins.
Located in the San Francisco section of the park, guests enter through the San Francisco Transit Authority building. As guests walk through the queue, they pass various props that were used in the film Earthquake. Upon reaching the end of the queue, guests enter the show building for the pre-show. The pre-show is divided into 3 separate theaters. The first theater features wallpaper that contains photographs of the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, as well as a window backdrop of a view of the San Francisco skyline. It's here that a casting director selects members from the audience as extras for a reenactment of scenes from the film that take place later during the pre-show. The audience then enters a second theater where they watch a brief film hosted by Charlton Heston, the star of the film, who explains how the special effects shots for the movie were created using scale models. Following the film, the screen raises to reveal a large section of the scale model that was used in the movie. In the third theater, the guests who were selected at the beginning of the pre-show participate in reenactments from the film, which include a scene on an escalator in a shopping mall, as well as a high fall stunt down a collapsed stairwell.
Okay, well, in the meantime, let's go ahead and try to recreate that scene you just saw. Take a look above me on the right. That is our matte painting. Over here on the left is a live action shadow proper in our soundstage.
Following this pre-show, the audience enters the ride portion of the attraction. Guests enter a subway station modeled after the BART's West Oakland station, where they board an open-air Golden Gate Transit subway train. Departing the station, guests travel beneath the bay and soon arrive at the Embarcadero subway station. Shortly after arriving at the station, the train is shaken by a minor earth tremor.
Ladies and gentlemen, we just experienced a slight tremor. There is no danger. Please remain.
That soon turns into a violent earthquake. The entire station is seemingly destroyed as large cracks form in the station platforms, sections of the roof collapse, a gasoline truck falls through the ceiling and bursts into flames, another subway train enters the station and derails, and a flash flood of water rushes down the stairs and into the station. Following the sequence, a live director appears from inside of a control booth and congratulates guests on surviving the big one. The subway train then backs out of the station and returns to the West Oakland station where guests disembark the train and exit the attraction. The attraction was a hit with guests, as not only did it allow guests to take a look behind the camera of how the special effects in the film were accomplished, but also allowed them to be part of the movie making experience as well. By 2002, Universal noticed that park guests were becoming less aware of the earthquake film, and so, the pre-show portion was revamped to sever some ties to the film and instead have a broader focus on model making and the special effects used in Universal films. Now in the second theater following the film, the screen would raise to reveal several scale models and props that were used in several Universal films, including E.T. the Extraterrestrial, How the Grinch Stole Christmas, U-571, and Earthquake. Even with the changes, the attraction's attendance continued to dwindle over the years, prompting Universal to begin drafting up plans to replace it with a new attraction, one that would solely focus on disaster films in general rather than just the earthquake film. Earthquake the Big One would officially close on November 7, 2007 to make room for its replacement, Disaster, a motion picture starring you.
Disaster Studios, the maker of Baboon, Fungus, Apakageddon, and many more of the most explosive, pulse-pounding motion picture mega events in the history of mankind. Brings you a cinematic spectacle unlike anything you've ever experienced. Prepare yourself for Disaster, a major motion picture ride starring you.
The attraction's renovation only took 1 month and 3 weeks, making it the fastest an attraction had been constructed at Universal Studios Florida. Disaster would officially open on January 18, 2008. Among the changes include a new storyline, a new pre-show experience, and new ride elements that were not in the original Earthquake attraction. The brand new storyline begins as guests enter Disaster Studios to tour where blockbuster disaster films are made. Much like the previous version, volunteers are picked to help film shots in a soundstage area. Guests also encounter the founder and CEO of Disaster Studios, Frank Kincaid, played by Christopher Walken, through a fusion effect that at the time had never been done before in an attraction, bringing Kincaid to life on stage in front of guests. The ride itself remained somewhat the same as the Earthquake version, with a few lighting differences and monitors on the vehicle, with a character named Mikey directing guests on how to react to the scenes around them. Scenes that the volunteers would help film during the pre-show for the disaster film Mother Nature are featured in a trailer for the film shown at the end of the ride, even featuring the film's star, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. In August 2015, Universal announced that Disaster would close for its replacement, Fast and Furious Supercharged, another attraction based off the Universal Studios Hollywood Tram Tour. The final ride on Disaster for guests took place on September 7, 2015. The attraction on the studio tour at Universal Studios Hollywood continues to operate as of June 2018, under the original title. However, Earthquake is now rarely referenced, making it debatable whether or not it still classifies as a film-based attraction. So why did the attraction close? While it was tweaked and partially re-themed since Earthquake, Disaster was relatively the same experience. Even though attendance levels rose when the attraction first opened, once guests learned that not much had changed except for the new pre-show, attendance levels began to dwindle back to what Earthquakes were. On its last day of operation, Disaster only had a 10-minute wait time, showing how little interest there was in the attraction. As Universal Studios Florida continued to move away from their edutainment and ride the movies motif and evolved to focus more on thrills and immersive world building, replacing the attraction with a newer, more popular movie franchise was an easy decision. Earthquake the Big One and Disaster, a motion picture starring you, played an important role in Universal Studios Florida. While it might not be remembered as being as exciting or thrilling as Confrontation or Jaws, Earthquake was an attraction that featured a unique blend of both education and entertainment, which really shook up the theme park world at the time. The attraction would go on to be the inspiration for future attractions, such as Twister the Ride at Universal Studios Florida, Backdraft at Universal Studios Hollywood, Lights, Camera, Action hosted by Steven Spielberg at Universal Studios Singapore, and the Lights, Motors, Action Extreme Stunt Show at Disney's Hollywood Studios. For over 25 years, Earthquake and Disaster were an exciting, informative, behind-the-scenes look of the magic that takes place on the silver screen. So that is the theme park history of Earthquake the Big One and Disaster, a motion picture starring you. As always, thank you for watching the video and supporting the channel. Don't forget to subscribe, and if there's any attraction you would like us to cover in future videos, leave a comment down below. Once again, thank you for watching, and until next time, we are moving on.